everybody.
Hi, guys. Well, from gorgeous Salt Lake City, Utah,
It's Thank God I'm Atheist.
the podcast,
I'm Frank Feldman.
and I'm Dan Beecher.
And coming up on the show today, Dan, we're going to be talking about tribes. People.
Tribes.
And so in groups, out groups, and how that might affect your ability as a thinker. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
What
fun.
what tribes are you in? We're gonna call out your tribe and what it might mean for you to be a member of it.
Yeah, and it might not be a good thing.
What? How dare you? How dare you?
But first, Dan.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan. Dan.
Oh no.
Oh,
What?
Dan.
Yes?
There is a group in America right now. My heart is just going out to them.
Oh.
I just feel so bad for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it
it's
the
a confusing.
Kardashians?
No, it's a confusing time. It's a confusing time for them. White Christians are they're not having. This is not their moment in America.
They're having a rough one, yeah.
They're kind of having everything handed to them at the moment, and in particular, I want to bring up the case of Franklin Graham.
Frank.
And his reaction to this week's monumental, truly unbelievable on some levels, decision by the Supreme Court of the United States with regards to LGBTQ rights in the workplace. And the fact that they have decided that current law in the form of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects LGBTQ workers from being fired for being, or not hired even actually, for being LGBTQ.
Yeah.
The same rights that have been extended to other Americans based on race, national origin, our former understanding of what the word sex meant in there, which was so gender, but now it's been broadened to also include LGBTQ folk, and to be honest, Dan, this I remember when gay marriage 5 years ago, when gay marriage was declared legal throughout the United States, and it was an unbelievable moment.
It was an earthquake.
It was an earthquake, and it felt there were a lot of emotions, and it was a big day. I honestly felt like I was a little bit more blown over by this. It was this, and in some ways, I think this is a more monumental decision because marriage is one of those things that there's a lot of class privilege essentially in a decision to extend marriage rights, because in a lot of ways marriage was the only thing that the rich gay people couldn't get for themselves. right
You
know what I mean? And so it really felt like it was this thing that great guys, thanks, you got yourself that, cool. But at the same time, of course, it was huge, and I recognize that. But workplace protections for the community, that's huge. That's essentially everyone, right? And it's definitely the working class members of the LGBTQ community are being covered by this, and in fact maybe even more so, right?
And it was shocking. I mean, it wasn't just a 5-4 decision. This was a 6-3 decision.
Unreal.
Which means that two of the more conservative justices
from the majority was written by fucking Gorsuch.
I know. I mean, talk about just Gorsuch just wanting to stick his thumb into Trump's eyeball about things.
Holy shit. And so big week for the LGBTQ community. But
you were saying there's a dark side to this.
Obviously, though.
A sad side.
Oh, if you're somebody like Franklin Graham, oh gosh, he's not going to like this. In fact, he got right onto Facebook to say some things. He says, as a Bible-believing follower of Jesus Christ, my rights should be protected. Oh. Even if my rights. Okay. He says, even if my sincerely held religious beliefs might be in the minority, I still have a right to hold them. The same holds true for a Christian organization. These are the freedoms our nation was founded on.
Oh, wow.
Well, okay. Nobody's taking away your right to believe something dickish, right? Like
True.
You can believe that all the livelong day. But you as an employer, right? This has now been decided. You don't have the right to let somebody go just because. Right.
Well, wait, but Frank, wait. What if he thinks it's icky? What if his employee does stuff that he thinks is icky?
I know, poor guy.
What about that? He has rights, Frank. Well, he has rights.
And he says Christian organizations should never be forced to hire people who do not align with their biblical beliefs and should not be prevented from terminating a person whose lifestyle and beliefs undermine the ministry's purpose and goals. And he also says that, and this is kind of interesting, he says that with this ruling by the Supreme Court, it has enacted a new law that adds sexual orientation and gender identity to the 1964 Civil Rights Act as protected classes. Now, just so everybody out there fully understands this, no, nothing new has been made here. They have just simply looked at the word sex. What they've done is they have said that anti-LGBTQ discrimination is sex discrimination.
Right.
That is the understanding when you look at the words and logically think it through. That is what LGBTQ discrimination is.
Yeah, the logic was basically like, if I can't fire a man for having sex with a woman, then I can't fire a woman for having sex with a woman.
Yeah, because essentially something. Yeah,
they're doing the same thing. If you can't fire one for doing it, then and the other one's doing the same thing, you can't fire the other one for doing it.
And very, very interesting stuff. And Franklin Graham does sort of bring up a point, and it is something that Gorsuch actually acknowledges in his what he wrote about the whole thing.
Right.
He said, that this is not essentially he said that this is not the final time that the court is going to be hearing cases on this, right?
Right.
And that this does not decide some religious consequences, right? That these are things that are going to have to be ironed out in the future. And so this is going to be an ongoing thing, but in the meantime, it is monumental. It is it was I was sitting at my computer. I was working. I hadn't seen that news yet. Maybe it hadn't even hit yet. I don't know. And I just could not listen to NPR. And so I turned it to the BBC World Service. And that's where I heard it. Was just and I remember like I was just working away, and then like they said it. 5 seconds passed. I said, wait, what the fuck did they just say?
Yeah.
And so I immediately got online and looked up the news. And
shocking. It was shocking. And now then they said DACA was good.
Yeah.
The world's topsy-turvy, people. Topsy-turvy.
This court, let me tell you, Roberts is really turning out to be a very interesting figure.
Yeah, we'll see.
On the Supreme Court. He was also... I mean, I know. He comes around and he's been the swing vote a number of times now on very interesting cases. The bizarro is that Gorsuch was involved. And so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see where this goes.
And then there was no surprise about frat boy Kavanaugh and his dissenting opinion, but that's okay. That's for another time.
Yeah.
Speaking of people being fired, I'm going to take us to Washington, D.C., where the National Cathedral, which is an Episcopal cathedral, seat of the Washington bishop.
Oh, really?
they have announced that they are laying off a fuck ton of people. The 13 full-time positions.
What?
And 13 part-time positions, and they're going to furlough another 12 full-time positions, all because of COVID-19.
They couldn't find another person to furlough. So
right?
13. Oh, that's terrible, Dan.
Yeah. So it's interesting because they're actually doing okay in terms of donations. And here's what shocks me. That only amounts to 15% of their full-time staff. 13 of them. They have so many staff.
What?
Why do you need so many staff?
It is the National Cathedral.
It is. Well, and here's why they need so many staff. Because it's not the donations that are the problem. The problem is they can't rent the place out for events. And that's where they were making a shit ton of their money. And so I guess it's all the events people. You know, the cathedral's been closed since March, and they're not letting tourists in. They're not letting anybody in. So while they're doing okay with, I was sad to find out that they were doing okay with donations because, frankly, we just don't need as much. We don't need that much religion in this world. We're okay.
No, yeah, I mean, fair enough.
But
I mean, Episcopalians, they're harmless, right?
No, they're not. They're less harmful than some.
Sure. Yeah. Agreed.
But yeah, I mean, the building itself is interesting. It's a sort of neo-Gothic thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've never actually been to it, but the pictures are pretty.
Yeah.
I
went
weird...
when I was a child. I didn't fully know what it was. You know,
yeah.
I was 10, and my family was in Washington D.C. And we went to the National Cathedral, and I honestly thought, I was very confused. I was like, well, what about separation of church and state? Because it was like I was smart enough at 10 to be like, well, how do we have a national cathedral?
Yeah. It turns out they just call it that.
They just call it
You're
that.
allowed to, if you're in Washington, D.C., you can just say, hey, this is the national coat hanger. and then you can charge people admission to see it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, cool, Dan.
Yeah.
This is actually interesting news from the Catholic Church. The Vatican has come out and
as gay? I mean, we all knew, but that's surprising.
The entire institution. Yep, we're gay.
We admit it. It's okay. What are you gonna do? Are we gay?
Yeah. They have come out and they are officially suggesting to Catholics around the world to disinvest from fossil fuel industries and from gun and defense. I guess armaments is how it's referring to it in the article.
Oh, okay.
The armament industry, and to closely monitor companies in sectors such as mining to see if they're damaging the environment, and basically saying you shouldn't be investing in them. You should not be profiting off of their degradation of the environment and also their contribution to death, essentially, right?
Right.
And this is all coming. It's coming out on the 5th anniversary of, and you may recall this, Pope Francis. He had an encyclical that came out, Laudato Si, about 5 years ago, the 5th anniversary, on the need to protect nature, life, and defenseless people. Do you remember that? I remember there coming out with a very strong statement.
I remember something about it.
Yeah, and so this is all meant to kind of continue that work, and to sort of clarify the church's stance. They say that Catholics should shun companies that are harmful to human or social ecology, such as abortion. They include that, and armaments, and to the environment, such as fossil fuels. Well, I'll definitely take their support of the environment and sort of, guns and weaponry and whatnot. maybe those industries don't need a lot of our support.
Right.
I don't like that whole comment about abortion, but hey, I'll have you on our side for the environment. How about that? I think that's that's a remarkable thing for them to come out and actually say, because I mean, look, there are a lot of fucking Catholics in the world, and if they all actually listen to this, it would be a powerful gesture.
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna. If I know anything about religious people, they're less religious when it comes time to make money. That's what I've learned about Mormons. That's what I've learned about everybody. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some folks will listen.
Have some integrity.
I like the idea of sort of conscientious investment. I think that keeping your investment, like paying attention to who you're investing in and what those companies' practices are, is a good way of voting with your pocketbook.
Yeah.
And if I had any money that any company would even close to notice, that would make a difference. My paltry investment portfolio is not anything any companies are. Walmart's not shaking in their boots that I'm not investing in them. Anyway, that's great. Good for the Vatican. I am going to talk a little bit about our president, Donald John Trump, and China, or as he calls it, China, because he has a very interesting relationship with that country. He loves to blame them for everything, and he loves to love on them for everything.
I know.
He's a very weird dude. So, apparently, here's the thing. Trump just barely signed a law that's basically calls for sanctions against certain Chinese officials for who are responsible for the detention camps holding more than 1 million Uyghurs from Western China.
Yeah.
The Uyghur population, for those of you who don't know, is China's Muslim population.
Yeah.
And because they are a not only an ethnic but a religious minority, they're in China. The Chinese government has scooped up more than 1 million of them, which I think in China doesn't actually even register as a number of people, but that's okay. And they've put them into what they've called re-education camps, which are basically torture camps, where they try and brainwash people into no longer being Muslim.
Also forced labor camps too.
Also forced labor, yes, because they're teaching them a trade, Frank. Yeah. They're teaching them a trade.
Yeah, no, the Uyghur camps are unbelievable.
It's horrific. Yeah. And it's a human rights violation, and it's awful. And it's interesting that the Trump administration is actually doing something about it, which is great.
Right.
And I applaud them. However, in the same moment as that's happening, also what's happening is that John Bolton's book, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, his book's coming out, and one of the snippets that he leaked, or that he published somewhere, apparently says that Trump, in a meeting with President Xi of China, told President Xi that he was super on board with those camps and keep the good work going. It was in a meeting that apparently only the two of them and translators were attending, but Bolton claims to have talked to one of the translators, and that's what apparently our president said.
Oh my God.
Which doesn't surprise me at all, frankly. Our president is a wildly racist and horribly anti-Muslim, Islamophobic dickhead. But
and if nothing
there
else,
you go.
Yeah, and if nothing else, he doesn't care about anybody but himself and his immediate situation, right? Like,
right.
It's not even Islamophobia at that point. Like, he just doesn't fucking care, right? Some head of the Communist Party in China, right? The president of the country, is up to something. He'd rather be in good with Xi than actually take a stand on an important humanitarian issue.
Well,
he doesn't even understand it in humanitarian terms. Like, I'm convinced of this. Yeah.
He doesn't understand it at all.
Right.
What he understands is this guy had a problem in his country, and he got tough with him. Yeah. He got law and order with him.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what he cares about, and he loves that. He loves that concept, and he wants to do that here with Antifa, that
Jesus
terrible
Christ.
group Antifa. I need to meet those guys.
Yeah.
You know all those people, that organization Antifa that's out there?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, Dan.
Yeah.
All right. So back to this country. And back to Utah specifically. In this moment that we're living through, and I guess I have to say which moment, through the Black Lives Matter protests and this seeming awakening that's kind of happening in this country right now over the issues of race and specifically the conversation is around policing. But obviously there's a lot more that's going on, and I think a lot of people are coming to terms with a lot of the racist past of this nation, and a lot of the we see the Confederate statues, the figures, like the Confederate generals, the statues of the Confederate generals in the South being torn down.
Yeah.
And it's great. And people are asking hard questions about people who are being honored through statues, or maybe even just by something being named after somebody, like the military bases, right? And
Fort
so
Bragg.
The way that this ends up playing out in Utah is the fact that Brigham Young was the founder of this state and the second president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
and the first territorial governor,
that he was an adamant and outright racist.
He loved his racism.
He loved it. And so I actually, lest anybody think that we might, I want to read some stuff that the man said. And this is very much on the record type stuff, because it's very much in front of a joint session of the legislature.
The Utah State Legislature.
By then Governor Brigham Young, and the title of this little discourse is "Giving Counsel on a Bill in Relation to African Slavery." This is from January 1852, and he says, "I have this section in my hand headed 'An Act in Relation to African Slavery.' I have read it over and made a few alterations. I will remark with regard to slavery, inasmuch as we believe the Bible, inasmuch as we believe in the ordinance of God, in the priesthood and order and decrees of God, we must believe in slavery. This colored race have been subjected to severe curses, which they have in their families and in their classes and in their various capacities brought upon themselves. And until the curse is removed by him who placed it upon them, they must suffer under its consequences. I am not authorized to remove it. I am a firm believer in slavery." I did not change. That is one paragraph of this thing. Normally I'll skip over stuff when reading it.
No.
Nope.
Not that.
That is the whole thing. He goes on.
He was a peach of a guy.
Yeah.
Really a sweet, sweet fella.
He says, they enjoy the privilege of living humbly before the Lord, their great master.
They enjoy it, you guys. Come on, they love it.
They enjoy the privilege. So as to enjoy the Spirit of the Lord continually. In short, as far as the common comforts of life, salvation, light, truth, enjoyment, and understanding are concerned, the black African has precisely the same privilege as the white man. What in the fuck? He continues. But they cannot share in the priesthood. They cannot bear rule. They cannot bear rule in any place until the curse is removed from them.
Obviously. It's obvious when you think about it, frankly.
When Kimball, it was Kimball, right? Spencer W. Kimball, who...
Yes, the president of the church in the late 70s.
He didn't talk about the curse being lifted, did he?
No.
Yeah.
No.
You think he would?
No, well, not in the moment that he changed the policy. No,
not in the official statement.
Here's what he didn't. The times that he did talk about it were in his book when he talked about because this was part of Mormon lore. Because here's the thing: in the Book of Mormon, it talks about these two groups who one of them was good and righteous, and they were white and delightsome, and the other was wicked and evil, and the Lord cursed them and marked them with darkness.
Right.
So whiteness was this sort of privilege, and darkness was the mark of evil. And in the Book of Mormon, as people became better, they became whiter.
Yeah.
And that was a belief that that Mormons carried for a long time.
Yeah.
And even Spencer W. Kimball, who eventually was the one who ended up granting blacks sort of full enfranchisement in the church, but in a book that he wrote, he talked about a Mormon family that took in two Native American kids, and how, as they got more educated and as they became, sort of more culturally white, they also visibly grew whiter too.
Oh my. Yeah.
So, it's not a great history in terms of racism. Yeah.
And there's one,
they haven't done great.
One more little thing I wanted to read. When the Lord God cursed old Cain,
Old Cain.
He said, until the last drop of Abel's blood receives the priesthood, okay, and enjoys the blessing of the same, Cain shall bear the curse. Then Cain is calculated to have his share next, and not until then. Consequently, I am firm in the belief that they ought to dwell in servitude. So I would say when picking people to sort of honor from our past, the time might be over for Brigham Young. Not that I was one who was like, oh yeah, Brother Brigham, but I didn't mind his statue downtown. I was always kind of like, he founded the city,
place,
whatever,
brought
right?
the people over, whatever.
Now, my understanding is that the church owns that statue, so it's not going anywhere. And of course, Brigham Young University, they're not changing the name. They would never. They would have to acknowledge their racist past. And to be honest, they'd have to deal with their racist present, because if they didn't have a racist present, they wouldn't have any problem dealing with their racist past.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
totally,
every time they refuse to acknowledge this reality, they're just being a bunch of fucking racists. And that's my take on it.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, listen, Brigham Young basically was driven into this valley by Green Flake, a slave. So the man he accepted slaves as tithing to the
Jesus
church.
Christ. Are you serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's actually a new book that I'm really looking forward to reading by Joanna Brooks. About white supremacy and Mormonism.
Dig into that.
Definitely. I am going to talk to you now about. I'm going to take us up to Boise, Idaho, the fair city,
the city of trees, Dan.
Is it the City of Trees?
Bois itself. Yeah, City of Trees. They've got
Is that what that means?
They have trees.
They do.
No, they have a beautiful little river park thing close into like the town itself, and there's just so many trees.
Okay, good. There's a thriving arborist community.
I like Boise a lot, actually.
I do too. Another thing that they have is the Cathedral of the Rockies.
Oh,
which is a large United Methodist church.
Okay.
And home of, as many cathedrals do, they have some beautiful stained glass windows. And one of their stained glass windows depicts historical figures from these United States.
Oh.
There's George Washington.
Uh-huh.
There's Abraham Lincoln. And, of course, you wouldn't want to do a historical trifecta without Robert E. Lee.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's just been chilling there. That's the Confederate general.
No.
Who has been on their thing since the 60s.
Oh, boy.
Just sort of sitting there looking out over the congregation as they worshipped. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is a good news story because that church has put up a whole bunch of signs all around it that say we repent. They've put it on their website, and they're taken generally down.
Nice.
They're getting rid of him and replacing him with an African American. They have not yet decided who it will be.
Well, good on them. Good on them.
They're going to do the right thing and take the shameful racist out, who is apparently dressed like a unicorn. It's very funny. Or not a unicorn, a leprechaun. He's
both equally absurd.
Yes. He's in a bright emerald green suit with matching bow tie.
What?
In the image. I think they were just going for color because, stained glass, but he looks ridiculous.
I wish he actually had a unicorn on his head. That would.
Well, that's what they should do, is put a horn on there.
Yeah, no, get two of them.
Actually, you know what? There's a little thing that sort of pokes up out of it. Anyway, they're actually doing the right thing. They're actually getting rid of it. I made the choice to go and find someone who was reporting this that had a comment section.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
And you will not be surprised to learn that Idahoans and many Americans are not taking this the right way. They are upset. They are furious.
Yeah.
And can we just say, for the record, that this does not erase any history?
No.
That,
in fact,
books are still around.
Yeah.
And that who we venerate is not the same as who we remember.
Right.
Those are two different concepts.
Right. In fact, I honestly think that with a lot of these things that are being taken down, that I hope that they don't have to do something with it immediately. Like, they can just take it down right now, but put it in a back room, crate it up, and when the time is right, create some sort of if you can put it in the right museum or something that can put it in historic context, right? That can talk about this moment and talk about who these figures are and talk about why it was taken down. Because it's important that we don't forget this process, right? That this is something that we learn how to do as a society, which is address these hard things, right? And these hard parts of our past, and learn how to talk about them, and learn how and if nothing else, or hopefully to understand them, right, in their correct context, right. Obviously, up in on display with the same stature and nothing helping you understand what this is all about. That's wrong, right? And these things have to be taken down. But,
right, and putting it in, giving it pride of place in an important place in a city or a building. That's a problem.
Yeah.
When we've got Brigham Young in a statue of Brigham Young in our Capitol building,
right,
and That's a problem.
Yeah.
It's not, and even though he is a founder of this state and he's an he's definitely a hugely important figure in this state, he also ordered the massacre of hundreds of Native Americans, and he was also a very bad man, as well as the good things that he did.
Right.
He was a very bad man. So we can recognize all the parts of the history,
right,
and maybe not venerate quite so much.
Right. And statues and stained glass windows and anything of the sort.
Yeah.
Venerates. It honors. Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yep.
All right. Well, if you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion, please feel free to write into us. Podcast at thankgodimatheist.com is the address.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. The telephone number is 424-666-8442.
Yeah, hey, go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/TGIAtheist. There might be some cool stuff coming down the pike in the next few months, so make sure that you see it, and yeah, click the like button.
And also, while you're on Facebook, search for the TGIA Members Only Lounge and request to join. It is a closed group, but we will let you in. Also find us on Twitter at TGI Atheist.
Yeah, more to come.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
So a little bit of audio went big time viral this week, and we thought we would play it.
Yeah.
This is Pastor Louis. Louis. Oh boy, Giglio.
You speak Italian. Come on.
I know how it's supposed to be said, and I know that it would not be Glio.
Right.
So it's either Giglio or Giglio,
right,
instead of the Giglio, which it should be. But anyway,
right.
So Pastor Louis Giglio, from
I like
Giglio, from the Passion City Church in Atlanta.
Yeah.
He
got himself into some hot water.
Did he ever?
He was talking now for frame, just for reference. He's talking to a Christian rapper, Lecrae. That's a black man. It's important that you know that the whole time he's talking, he's looking directly at a black man who is nodding, but he made it clear later on was not okay with what was being said in the moment. So let's hear what he has to say about race relations in America.
But I want to flip that upside down, because I think the other side of it is true with our nation's history. We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad, but we miss the blessing of slavery, that it actually built up the framework for the world that white people live in and lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege, and when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people, because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I both have struggled in these days with, if the phrase is the trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart.
Sure.
Let's get down to what then do you want to call it? And I think maybe a great thing for me is to call it white blessing, that I'm living in the blessing of the curse that happened generationally that allowed me to grow up in Atlanta.
The blessing of the curse, Frank.
The blessing. It's such a blessing being white.
It is like I would almost call it privileged. I would almost say that the term white privilege is exactly the right term.
Might be better phrasing.
Jesus
boy,
Christ.
it's cringy. It's so cringy to hear.
It's so bad. Oh my God.
The issue for me, the thing that I'm hearing in this whole thing, right, is that we somehow need to make this easier for white people.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just like, no, come on. The issue is not the word white privilege, right?
Right.
That's not
the problem here.
The issue. This is not the problem in America. Is that
Oh my God.
white people? Well, I guess there is a problem that white people are so sensitive in their privilege that you can't even point out the privilege. And I don't think that it should be watered down to try to get some people to come on over. Because if you want them buying in to this whole discussion, and the thing that gets them over to the discussion is their acknowledgement of their white blessing, you've gotten them over for the wrong discussion.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Like,
not only that, half of the problem of what's happening here is that the people who are privileged part of the privilege is they live in a world of comfort.
Yeah.
And in order to understand the actual world, the real world that people who aren't privileged live in, they have to get a little discomfort.
Yeah.
You gotta actually learn that the comfort that you have is at the expense of someone else, and it's not how the rest of the world lives.
Right.
So I'm sorry if it makes you a little uncomfortable to hear that you are privileged, and for someone to say that you should check that privilege.
Yeah.
That's the point. Feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy
Oh my God.
That's just like the worst thing.
It's so cringy. It's so. He later apologized. He recorded a quasi tearful apology.
What? I didn't watch the apology. What does he say?
It was okay. It wasn't great in that he didn't demonstrate in any way that he understood why it was bad. He just understood that it was bad. And to me, that's not a very good apology. To me, if you really want to apologize, you have to show everybody that you understand why what you did wrong was wrong, why people are upset with you, and you have to acknowledge that upset, and you have to apologize to the thing that you did. Yeah. And what he did was, I'm sorry that I used the word white blessing. That's not what's in my heart, And I honestly think the guy's heart is actually in the right place. He wants to help he wants to be part of the solution, but he's one of these white people that doesn't actually want to listen to everybody. He wants to tell the black community how to make their lives better by cushioning the blow for the white folk.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
we need to figure out how to make this whole racism thing easier for those that benefit from it.
Maybe we can just build them a ramp down from racism instead of making them sort of climb their way, find their own way down. Maybe we can ease them out of their racism. That'll work.
It just sucks so bad.
We're in a rough time, people. But hey, NASCAR of all people, of all organizations, is taking great strides to anti-racism. So there's hope in the world. As far as I'm concerned, seriously, I'm not kidding you. When NASCAR had all of their racers do an anti-racist video and then banned the Confederate flag at all of their events.
Yeah.
That has given me more hope than almost anything else in the world.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm sorry. You mean the loser flag, right?
Right. And a lot of jokes went out on the internet about how the final lap flag that they wave is still a Confederate flag because it's just white.
God.
Anywho, we had some folks write into us, which we should talk about. This one is from someone calling themselves Jam Nasty. I don't approve of that. It's fine. Anyway, Frank, Dan, I was talking with a good friend that works in the welfare department, and we got on the topic of food stamp fraud. Well, I guess it is a real problem, and the biggest offenders by a large margin are polygamous Mormons.
Yeah.
I guess all the wives married through the church and not necessarily recognized by the government agencies all file independently and get the maximum benefits. Then they open up a small grocery store for their little weird community. I guess there's a bust for one of these operations every couple years or so.
Oh,
she says it's a real problem. Now,
I didn't. I never knew about the grocery store side of it. I'd always heard about the polygamous wives, like being on food stamps.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I always thought that was kind of like, well, okay, whatever, you know.
Right.
No way. They'll open up a little store, and so that is genius.
Yeah. Jam Nasty goes on to say, now I will admit I have not fact-checked this personally, but my friend has been managing that department for about 10 years or so I figure she'd be privy to that sort of thing.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and we've definitely heard of that. That's actually a very real thing because, they all file as single parents, even though they're not technically single in their eyes. They are in the state's eyes, and so they might
as well, bleed the what's they have a phrase for it, right? Bleed the demon or bleed
the beast or something like that.
Bleed the beast,
something like that. Yeah,
exactly. Because they're defrauding the government, which they think is evil, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You can justify anything, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay.
There you go. Okay, fine. I'll read the side note. On a side note, Frank, I absolutely adore your laugh. It is the cutest thing. It's too bad you're taken and I'm straight, says Jam Nasty.
Aw, Jam Nasty. Thank you.
So there you go. Paul wrote into us, Frank and Dan, love the show. I just listened to the last episode where you talk about the apparent inevitability of violence intermixing with religion. Although I'm an atheist now, I spent decades in the Brethren of Christ denomination in South Central Pennsylvania. The Brethren in Christ, or BIC Church, broke away from the Mennonites over the method of baptism. Mennonites poor, BIC believe in the total immersion, but retain the Mennonite commitment to nonviolence.
Okay.
Conscientious objection to violence precludes Mennonites and BIC members from joining the military and participating in any activities that could be described as violent. There is also a very strong emphasis on service and commitment to making life better for those less fortunate. The Mennonites and BIC join hands and to lend a hand in the Mennonite Disaster Service and the Mennonite Central Committee on many very worthy projects. This exemplary form of evangelism made it very difficult for me to separate myself from the church because I still believe that a commitment to nonviolence and community service are essential to being a decent human being. I left the church over belief issues, but I still maintain a close relationship through friends and family to the Mennonite and BIC ideals of nonviolence and community service. So here is one, I think, shining example of a nonviolent religion. Perhaps this is just one example that proves the rule. The genuine expression of loving one another made it very hard to separate over belief issues when I realized I just couldn't believe the God stuff anymore. So thanks, Paul, for that.
Yeah.
I just did some cursory looking around, poking around at the BIC and the Mennonites, and I love those ideals, and I think that those are beautiful. I think that if the organization got bigger, and was actually like, I don't know, violence is just inherent in humans, and I did find plenty of examples of misogyny and problems with violence towards women and that being silenced in the community and that sort of thing. There's always going to be violence, but I suppose it's not fair to say that it's inherent to all religion. It just seems to crop up every time. So maybe the Brethren in Christ are great and they're actually nonviolent and they'll stay that way. I find it hard to believe, personally.
Well, and it definitely, though, speaks to Paul's experience with them,
and that's wonderful. And actually, and I don't mean to shit on them. I don't know much about them, but I'm glory be if anybody is espousing nonviolence, I'm all for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dan.
Yes.
We have some people to thank on Patreon.
I'm excited to do it. I'm ready to participate.
All right. Well, we have one new deacon.
Okay.
Having signed up. Claire, thank you.
Oh, Claire,
we have
thanks.
2 new teachers. Lord Elpis, and Sonia.
Okay, wonderful.
So
thank you
thank
guys.
you to the both of you. What these fine folk did, they went to thankgodimatheist.com and clicked on the support tab and followed the links on over to Patreon, where we have a campaign running. And we're actually pretty close to our next goal.
And they got the priesthood.
And
that's what's amazing. They are now full-fledged priesthood holders.
They have offices, all three of these, in the Aaronic priesthood.
Yeah.
Meaning, deacons get to awkwardly stand in church while passing around the sacrament and don't know what to do with their hands when they don't have the tray. And then our two teachers, they get to set the whole thing up.
Yeah.
Arrive a little early, put a blanket down or a sheet down.
They have
tablecloth.
Literally, and this is a guarantee from me, from us. If you sign up with us, the priesthood that we bestow upon you has exactly the same amount of power as the priesthoods of any religion in the world.
Oh yeah, no, this is the real
you will receive
deal.
all of the magic that comes with any form of priesthood. So, rock and roll, baby. Anyway, we love all of you.
Yeah. And as always, we have our top donor, our Lord and Savior, Dennis. Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
Turns out that we all belong to different groups.
Yeah, here's the thing about human beings. We're kind of shitty by ourselves. You put one human out into the middle of the wilderness, we're not like wolves. We don't do well. We do poorly.
Right.
We're not like other animals. So we have developed evolutionarily the need to be a member of a group.
Yeah.
And boy, do we do it. We are social critters. But here's the problem. We are also evolutionarily programmed to choose our groups over anything. And we become quite shitty quite quickly when it comes to that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it because here's the thing. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a philosopher, and he was talking about we were talking about people who are in religion and especially in cults or whatever, and how hard it is to get someone out. Literally it's a deprogramming to get someone out of a religion or a cult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how crazy that is. And then we started talking about how that kind of applies, how groupthink, how tribalism in humanity becomes more important than facts, than logic, than anything. And it ends up trumping, like, smart people, with great brains and PhDs and education stuff still believe in young Earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's once you allow your mind to be indoctrinated into something and you've chosen a group and that's your tribe and that's your group, whether it be your religion or your political party or your, members of your race or any number of things, your brain stops thinking right. It's this. It's an amazing. And one of the things that very clearly happens is that humans we compartmentalize. So our brains work really well in certain places. You know what I mean? Like we can, like you can still go, oh, okay, well, I've got a toe fungus, and science has worked out how to sort out a toe fungus. So I will believe science.
Right.
And then when science says COVID-19, well, the science knows about that. We don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, but we have these great recommendations from very smart science people about what we should do, except that somebody decided to politicize it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say who it was, but his initials are Donald Trump. And he decided to make it a question of political party and affiliation. And suddenly, half the country thinks it's a hoax, or that it's not as bad as a cold, or that it's that it's just overblown by the mainstream, lamestream media. And suddenly we've got a whole bunch of people giving themselves a horrible disease because they don't believe it. And that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's shocking where it will take you. Like, just talking to my parents who are Fox Newsy types.
Right.
They won't hear it.
Yeah.
And my mom and I actually kind of got into this thing where I'm like, and I didn't know, I should have, but I didn't know that the word scientist was a little bit of a trigger.
What?
Yeah, I was like, but the scientists and bloody and she's like, the scientists?
You believe in them?
And at the moment, I was so incensed by just her dismissive attitude about the scientists that I even failed to be like, you know who my partner is, right?
Right.
You know what he does for a living, right? like, don't just think about who you're talking to first, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what in the fuck? And, and again, exactly like you say, boy, those doctors at the cancer hospital, they're miracle workers.
Oh, yeah. Right? Yeah.
And that amazing drug, that unbelievably amazing drug that cured my father's stage 4 lung cancer. Right.
Yeah. He's still alive.
And they acknowledge the science. Right,
yeah.
in that regard. They know what it is, and they flat fucking refuse to I don't know how they compartmentalize it. I don't know how they push one bit and not that.
Yeah.
Right?
The more I think about it, the more I think that group affiliation, even in groups that I love, even, group, like, if you love your atheist group or whatever, group affiliation, there's a danger that your brain will work worse because of it. Because when something threatens the group, or when something threatens to make the group look bad, or when somehow the group is not great, you end up being in danger of bad thinking.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting though is this sort of hierarchy of those groups, because everybody's placing different emphasis onto the different groups that they're in, right? Because there's an obvious group that my mother and I both belong to, i.e. the group of the Feldmans.
Yeah.
Right?
There you go.
Or just, our little family unit.
Right.
And she has chosen that her allegiances to other groups are more important than her willingness to trust her child.
Right.
Her college educated child.
Well, in fairness, you are an apostate. So
I know, and that
you've proven you can't be fully trusted.
I know. But it's just interesting that like which groups people are willing to align with more, right,
yeah,
than the people that they know very well,
yeah,
right.
And this applies. This doesn't just apply to conservative thinkers or whatever. It applies
absolutely not. Yeah.
To I saw a friend post on Facebook. I'm in a few groups that are like Utah filmmakers or whatever. And a friend of mine who makes her living in the film world posted a thing that said, hey, vote for this governor, gubernatorial candidate. He supports our industry. He supports the film industry.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yeah, okay. What else does he support, though? Like,
Right.
if you're a single issue voter, you're failing. You have to look at a much bigger picture because, look, Trump's only in office because there's a significant number of people who want to save a bunch of unborn babies.
Yeah.
They ignored grab them by the pussy. They ignored I could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody. They had to walk through a minefield of bullshit, let alone the fact that the man's just a boorish imbecile.
Right. And they surely in every other context could see that.
Yeah. In any other context, they would recognize him as the buffoon that he is.
Yeah.
But they needed to save the babies. And that was one issue, and that was all they cared about. And you know, we're reaping the consequences now, being, you know, one of the worst COVID-19 countries in the world, where other countries have significantly, you know, Germany is sailing through this. New Zealand's did an amazing job. Yeah. And our country for the entire month of February, our leader was just like, no, there's nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. It's going to go away. It's like magic. It'll just go away. Don't worry.
I know. I mean, if I would actually take being in a little bit of a mess, a la Sweden, if it had just been intelligent people working on a real theory, trying to navigate our ways through it honestly and legitimately, but still kind of end up with a mess on our hands, right? Because
you're doing the Walter quote from Lebowski. Say what you will about National Socialism, at least it's an ethos.
You know what I mean, though?
Yeah, like, totally.
I would much rather be in that situation than just rudderless and like just nothing except crass political self-interest being what's leading us down this road.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. The guy who literally said we should stop testing, then we'd have fewer cases. Okay, that's who's in charge of this thing. Great. We're going to do just fine. So, I mean, and what's amazing is that certain people are actually breaking off from their affiliations. A few people, you know, the numbers are dropping for our president, but not fast and not a lot and not in the ways that you'd think it should if people were using their brains right.
Yeah, or in the ways that would make me feel hopeful about this fall.
Yeah, no, don't get too hopeful. Everybody still has to put their nose to the grindstone and put in the work to get this guy out. But the point for me is a watch out for your tribes thing, because it's not a matter of like you don't have to abandon your tribe. Whatever groups you love, you don't have to abandon them. You don't have to. You don't have to think they're bad, but understand that groupthink is not as good as you thinking, and that going with what the group says isn't always the right answer. And so questioning your tribe is a good thing, even if it feels a little scary. I think that's the idea.
Nice.
All right, we'll leave it at that then. If you guys have a tribe that you, Frank, you had proposed when we were talking about this that the good thinkers tribe or something like that. All right.
Yeah, I was like, well, what about? I mean, if you get yourself stuck with the good thinkers.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
You know, it might affect your thinking.
There's the loophole. If you have a loophole tribe that you'd like to talk to us about, or a tribe that makes things so much worse, please feel free to write into us about it. Podcast@thankgodimatheist.com is the address.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. The telephone number is 424-666-8442.
Totally. Go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/TGIAtheist. I promise you, cool things will come of it.
And while you're on Facebook, search for the TGIA Members Only Lounge and request to join. It is a closed group, but we will let you in. Also find us on Twitter at TGIAtheist.
Yes, indeed. Hey, thanks so much to all of you. Thanks to Danny and Amy for being moderators on the Members Only Lounge.
And a big thanks goes out to the Red Rock Hot Club and to Gordon Johnston for the use of their music.
And thanks to all of you within earshot of this podcast for tuning in. We sure do appreciate you.
Bye-bye. Coming up today on the show, Dan.
Do you remember what we're going to talk about?
What were we talking about?
We're going to talk about tribes.
Tribes, okay. We're going to be talking about... That's so stupid.
You want to take another run at it?
Yeah, but...
Start with coming up on today's show.